See, this is what I was talking about earlier. It's got a flared base, so that way it doesn't matter. Okay. Anyway, you've probably come to this video for one of 3 classic reasons. Hey, you're hammered. Enjoy, brother. Also, well, you are following the saga that is the sound deadening videos of this channel. And this is the video that I've been born to make, or just next in the series. Unfortunately, in our Buick sound deadening videos, I haven't done the floor pan. And you might be asking, Matt, why haven't you done the floor pan, you fucking idiot? Well, I can tell you that. I'd already done it before I started the video, so can't really go back and not do it. Well, I could, but we're not. So on our Volvo 240 project, well, this is the perfect time to install full sound deadening on the floor and experiment with that dirty little F word, foam. So go ahead and take your pants off and sit back. You're probably already doing that if I know you. And we're gonna be installing some Butyl rubber mat, some foam, and then using a decimeter in between all that, maybe even a little thermometer action if you know if you're gonna, okay, and see what we can do here. So for our base layer of sound deadening, our Volvo 240, well, we're gonna be throwing in this Siless sound deadening mat. Now, all you're gonna need is a couple boxes of that and some of these tools. Maybe a few others, depending on how your interior falls off. Okay, easy boy. Interior comes apart, but I really like these sound deadening rollers. They leave a little notched groove as you roll over it, so you can see where things have stuck down. And full disclosure, we're gonna be doing the entire floor pan and up as far as I can easily reach on the firewall on this project. Now, I think it's time to clear the air. I get asked this almost hourly on the streets. The question is, Matt, why are you the way that you are? Okay, that's, okay, Dad. But the other question that people ask on the streets is sound deadening quality. Is there a difference? Should I be buying it from China? Because that seems like a good source. And what do you think about asphalt-based butyl things? Well, I'll tell you. Right after I finish my Santa filling time. This is a butyl-based sound deadening. You can tell by the way that it is. It doesn't smell like asphalt. That's pretty much your go-to sign. You could probably try to listen to the manufacturer as long as they're not total sketchballs. They're not gonna completely lie to you, but just don't use asphalt-based soundings like Peel and Seal, Rat, Trap, Mat, Skittle Mat. If it has Rat, Trap, Packs, Rattler in it, don't be buying that. The reason is asphalt, especially when it gets cold, gets really firm. And you need it to absorb these sound things rather than just vibrating as one solid chunk. Don't get me started on that. Some cars have asphalt-based sound deadening in them. That's neither here nor there because, mind you, there's a bean counter saying, hey, get this thing out the door as cheap as possible, but make it somewhat usable. So they can slather asphalt on the floor pan back in the day, and it didn't matter because it was decent and it worked reasonable for the time. I have chosen to use the 115 mil thickness, or 130, 120. I'm using a thicker daddy boy than average because I found that if you use a thick daddy boy in one layer, it's basically the coverage of 2 of the thin layers. Now I was wondering what was making noise underneath the carpet under here. Did not expect to find an amp for just the rear speakers that don't exist on this car, covered with leaves. Clearly some sort of mammalian type creature has been living here. That creature is me. But there was another one underneath the dash. That's where I tuck my amps. That's where some sort of rat likes to live. I don't blame you, buddy. Seems nice back here. All right, before we get started on any of this nonsense, we gotta, no pun intended, get started. Okay, so that was actually 90% of the battle today. Now I want to at least do 3 different tests today. Test A, well, this is just gonna be the decibel reader, vehicle not running, chilling on the seat to get a baseline. Maybe there'll be some traffic in the background. Maybe there won't. Depends on the traffic. Then the next test, test A, is gonna be idling once it's fully warmed up and just chilling. We'll see how that goes. And then finally, test A, again, is gonna be driving around at 25 miles an hour to see what kind of road noise we get. We're not gonna do any more testing because I found on the interstate, well, the car doesn't do good on the interstate. But for the last and not least test, test day probably, is gonna be with a temperature probe. Now, we've all been probed from time to time in our lives, but on our last video where we talked about sound deadening a roof with our F-150, you can find it, well, on YouTube, probably, I guess. Now that video I was kind of conflicted on because we didn't get a lot of sound deadening performance out of it. If anything, it was quieter during the rain, which is neat. But we did get a lot of insulation value. The amount of times that I had to turn the AC on in the summer, well, that didn't change, but you could just tell that the roof wasn't just pouring heat on you, which is kind of a really weird feeling, and it wasn't what I was expecting. So before we even got our sexy little fingers on the keys, well, it was about 54 degrees on the passenger side floor. Now I chose the passenger side floor rather than not the passenger side floor because the catalytic converter is right underneath there. 54 degrees, it's a little cool today, a little nipply, if you know what I mean. Let's see what happened after we took it for a 30-minute drive. 2, 81, 81, 80, ooh, 80, 80, 80, 81. Ooh, it's gonna get warmer. 83, 80, 99, yeah, take it. Point something, 1, 7, 100, that's more than 99, 101. 100, that's less than, 99 again, that's less. Okay, that's not the results I want. Yeah, let's skew these results nice and tight like, ooh, yeah. 104.2, you have a fever, my friend. 86, 85, 86, 87, 85, 82. Okay, we're done. So I'm having some issues with getting the sound deadening to stick. And I know what you're thinking, that's when you bought the cheap Russian sound deadener. I know, but I've used this stuff in the past and it's not normally this problematic. And I've only had problems when it's installing on top of the Volvo sound deadener. Now your cheat code for life, if this happens to you, is to go ahead and heat up the actual factory sound deadening and heat up the Butyl mat that you're installing. There's something about it that just makes things want to vibe better when they're hot. It's also about 50 degrees today, so it's not helping that it's cold out. Throw your sound deadening out in the sun, let it warm up a little bit, it'll get way mushier, but that's your cheat code for getting things to stick, the things that don't want to stick. And we just got back from our first test, and it looked like it was quieter. That doesn't make sense. It looked like it was quieter on the decibel meter, but we'll have to go back and analyze the video to see what happened. But I will throw it in a snazzy graph right there. Oh yeah, look at that fucking snazzy graph. Unbelievable. You and me knew we were gonna have at least 3 decibels of difference because I can hear it. And 3 decibels of difference is basically the minimum the human ear can functionally understand as a difference in sound level. So honestly, I knew there was gonna be some sort of difference. Not surprising there. You've seen from our other videos, this shit happens. But what I am actually really excited to test today is foam, a good a sound deadener as the world makes it out to be. Now, me personally, I haven't done a lot of sound insulation with just foam. Really, the only time I see foam as a good use in a car is when you're doing it like the speaker back things where you've got a speaker here and the waves hit it so there's no standing. That whole shenanigans. And also, apparently, using it as a decoupler when you're throwing mass-loaded vinyl over your floor pan or whatever you're trying to quiet it down. When you've got a thick layer of mass-loaded vinyl, which is like a sound blocker for all intents and purposes, you don't want to have it sitting directly on your floor because then your vibrations would just transfer right to it and it's not going to do a good job. That's when I'd use closed-cell foam to decouple them and the vibrations won't touch. But after seeing all these reviews for the foams, I started to question my life choices. Now, this panel right here is what divides the trunk from the rest of the cabin. At first glance, it looks like some pretty nice cardboard. Like I've had better, I think. The issue is when you're tapping that ass, well, it makes a lot of noise. And this happens as you drive down the road. Now, even if the rear seat was installed in this car, it'd still be knocking on heaven's chassis rear bracing. And we gotta fix that. Now I've got a roll of the Siless foam and the individual tile squares. I believe on like long flat areas, like a roof or this panel for instance, that the rolls actually work really well because you can just slather it on in one go. But if you're trying to fit it to a whole bunch of random conformed areas, like the floor pan of a car, it's easier to actually use the individual pieces. Now we're just gonna set this pig bitch back in there. Now, unfortunately, I'm running into an issue where my clips won't penetrate deep enough, that's what she said, the panel again, so it won't actually hold this piece of cardboard in there. Now, since this is just a through bolted panel, I'm just going to use some 1/4-inch bolts with a locking nut on the back. That way it can keep it just tight enough so it doesn't vibrate, but we're not actually smashing it down there, so it's like disintegratingly tight. And after giving her a quick fisting, well, I found a spot that if you got the bolts just tight enough, nothing rattled. Now, if you ever need the foam to slide underneath something, well, it's not going to do it because this stuff is adhesive-y as adhesive. But I do have a trick for you. Just go ahead and slice the backing paper, leave the paper attached. That way you can slide it underneath things, but it'll still hold tight from the other area that you've peeled the paper back. Wow, that's the second Matt Dab tip today. Well, maybe a third. Maybe it's only the first, I don't know. I haven't been counting. Because my OCD is clearly in full effect today, I like to either make all the tile straight lines this way or this way and mismatch the seams, kind of like installing flooring. Now, I found that using scissors work best when you still have the backing paper on it, because it'll get all clogged up if it touches the adhesive. But if you've already peeled the backing off, a box cutter works great. After 2 hours of work for literally no reason, you're left with a floor that looks something like this. Or it doesn't, just because it doesn't look like this. And while I don't mind covering up some of the wiring on the floor here with foam or wrapping it with the butyl rubber, I always like to expose some of it just in case I ever got to dig in here for something that goes horrifyingly wrong. Well, then I'll actually be able to track down where these wires flow through the floor pan. All right, so now we got all the foam installed. We're gonna do the same testing and driving we did before. One at idle, but we're gonna do another test right around 25 miles an hour, driving through my neighborhood, see if there is any difference in the sound deadening. And I can already kind of feel that something is different right now. If there was one thing we could do different about this test, I'd be curious to see what frequencies we are deadening more than others. Now, my guess is that we're tackling pretty much the entire spectrum with the butyl rubber, although it's way easier to dampen the higher, but just based on the exhaust sound I'm hearing, we're doing a decent in the lower registers. Now, I'm not talking about like heart-throbbing exhaust, because this is a tractor motor, but you get what I'm saying. Now, the foam kind of makes it feel dead in here, and we're all dead inside one way or the other, but it doesn't have any echo in here. I don't know what range my voice is. It's probably pretty low and manly, and I wish we had a microphone that would actually see the frequencies of what we're doing. Oh, there we go. So, what did a couple hundred hours, probably several $100s return? Well, a little bit of peace of mind while driving around. I will say that it is oddly quiet in there, and we haven't even done the doors and the trunk, so getting while the getting is getting. But the real question is it worth it? I believe it is. I like increasing horsepower just as much as I like shortening up brake distance, like making interiors quieter. I think there is nothing cooler than an all-around car that's just great at everything, or in this case, running. It's pretty, well, it's kind of okay at that. So, would I do it all over again? Yeah. It's been a long one, but I think the results speak for themselves. So, join us again when we, I don't know, sound deaden something else around here, or I don't know, maybe put some new wheels on this pig. That's a project that's coming up soon. Just take a look at these GTA wheels that we snagged. Oh yeah, you guessed it. We're gonna find a way to bolt these on our Volvo 240. Well, I can tell you right now, it's wheel adapters. We're gonna go behind the scenes though, and how and why I am the way that I am. So join us for that. Have a good one. The telltale tines that it's asphalt. Tell tines. Horsepower, just as Mike. Who's Mike? Who the fuck is Mike? This is